Welcome back to Pottery with Patrick. Today we're going to work on some slab pottery. Okay, so today we're going to start off with a little trick for making slabs. We're going to use some tar paper, a straight edge, a box cutter with a new blade. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure the sides of our tar paper are nice and square. We're going to use our straight edge, keeping our fingers well clear of the edge, and cut down the side with our box cutter. You want to make sure that you're very careful and that your box cutter blade is new. We're going to square up a couple of sides so that we end up with a nice, clean, right angles to work off of. Once we have our sides cleaned up, we're going to make a couple of marks at about 4 inches. We're not going to use a magic marker or a pencil or anything because the tar paper actually doesn't really respond to that well. So we're just going to make a few little hashes with our knife. There, we can see them really clearly now. We're going to use those and line up our straight edge, keeping our fingers well clear of the edge, and we're going to run our box cutter down the side, cutting through the tar paper. Then we're going to make us another couple of marks at about 6 inches going the other way. Once we have those marked up, we'll line up and cut through again. Now, once we've cut through them, what we're going to end up with is essentially a template. We're going to take that little 4x6 template and we're going to cut ourselves out 3 more sides. Okay, so now I've got all 4 sides cut out, and I took one and turned it to the side to make myself a little piece that's going to be our top and our bottom. Now you want to rough them up because they have a little bit of a bend to them. Once you get them roughed up, go ahead and make another hamburger. I've got about 1.5 pounds of clay here, and I'm just going to make it into our hamburger patty like we do with all our slabs, and then roll it out. I'm going to roll it out in both directions again, right? Again, we want to stretch it both ways because if we don't, it's going to warp and contort and it's not going to stay together very well. And I'm just going to continue stretching it out until I have it laid out big enough for it to take 2 of our tar paper walls, right? Now this is the trick of it. Once you get it out and you lay the 2 tar paper walls on it, you're going to roll over top of them one more time. You want to make sure that the walls are on top of the slab, not hanging off. Now the walls are water resistant, right? The tar paper is water resistant, so it's actually going to stick to the clay. We can then take our fettling knife and cut the excess clay out from around it. And what we'll end up with is a set of same sized walls that have tar paper on one side. That tar paper is going to act kind of like a scaffolding, and it's going to give the wall a lot of strength when we go to try and put them together. They actually, believe it or not, are able to stand up all on their own sometimes with the wall. It gives that much more strength. So we'll do that for all 4 sides and the top. Okay, so I've got my sides, and my top, or rather my bottom, didn't want to stick. That's easy. All you do is take a little water and press your tar paper right back down to it. You're good to go. Now we're going to join these pieces together. We're going to start by scoring 2 sides of each slab. This piece on the side we're going to use here in just a minute. We need to make sure that we score the right sides so that they line up. So I'm going to score the right here and then the top. And then I'm going to score the edge. All right. Again, if you get ahead of yourself and you accidentally score the wrong side, it's not a big deal. We're going to be putting these together, right away. Just go ahead and score the other side. So now that I've got two edges scored, they're going to seam up. And then I'm going to score our bottom. I'm going to go ahead and score our bottom all the way around, just so that it's something I don't have to do later. And it's easier to score it when it's here on the flat than when it's sort of adhered and tucked to the other pieces. I'm going to hydrate the edges. And when I seam these together, I'm going to start on one end and I'm going to work my way down the other end. Again, you should get a little bead of slip that forms in the seam. That lets you know that you're not getting air pockets. All right. With the tar paper there, I can actually put quite a bit of pressure onto that seam and compress it so that it stands. And then I'm going to do my bottom. Now in the bottom, I'm going to start right in the corner. You don't want to chase into the corner, you want to work out from the corner. Once I get the pieces together, I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning up that seam. And again, you can see, you can put an awful lot of force through that tar paper. With the box open like this, it's really easy to get to the seams and clean them up. So now we're onto our third slab. We're going to score the bottom and the side, and we're going to seam them together starting in the corner. Doing this with the tar paper means that we can work essentially as soon as we get the slabs put onto the tar paper, we're ready to start building the box. Normally, if you were working with slabs, you would have to let them stiffen up and dry, which means that they're not quite as pliable as these wet slabs are. So the tar paper it lets us jump a little bit ahead in the process, but it also lets us make changes if we need to. So we're going to start in the corner and we're going to compress up. And then we're going to compress that edge all the way to the end, chasing it from one side to the other so that we get that little bead of slip. Going to go ahead and take my clay knife and clean it up. Sometimes you end up wanting to smooth it instead of scrape it, so you can just use the rounded tail end of your clay knife. There we go. Nice little clean corners and seams. Now we're going to move on to our last wall. This is the one wall gets a little bit tricky. Before this, we've only been doing 2 sides at a time. Now we're doing 3. We're going to score all 3 sides. But where this one is different is we're not going to start in a corner, but we're going to start in the middle of the bottom wall, the short wall there. So when we start adhering this one together, we're going to start right in the middle, work our ways out to the corners, and then up to the top of the pot. That's the easiest way to do it, and it's most likely way to not get air pockets. Again, we're going to hydrate the edges. And we're just going to start working our way up the pot. This is the only one, they get slightly trickier as we go. So this one's going to have 3 sides that we do at once. Our last piece is going to have all 4 sides. So starting in the middle, working to the corners, and then I'm just going to work up one edge. The tar paper actually locks the clay in place and keeps it from drooping. So I can actually be a lot more aggressive with it in place. And then just clean up some of the extra bits off the edge. You'll have a little bit of extra slip. Now we got to do the top. Well, because we no longer need the bottom to be supported, what we're going to do as soon as we're done cleaning up the interior is we're going to peel the tar paper off the bottom and we're going to use it to make our top. All right, we're going to grab that little piece of clay that we set aside earlier. If you didn't set one aside, you can go ahead and make one now. And we're just going to take our bottom, since it doesn't need to support anything right now, and we're going to use the tar paper to make our top, right? That way we don't cut too much tar paper. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you cut a top out as well. But this way, I'm a skinflint. I always like to be as conservative as I can with my materials. Now this one's going to be a little bit more challenging because we got to do all 4 sides at once. The best way to do this is just to start on one side and chase it all the way around. All right. Now, there is a problem here that's going to develop because with our seams all the way around, we're not going to be able to get in there and clean it right now. We'll have to get in there and clean it later. Now, once we have it all tucked together, we will set it up and just let it dry. We'll wrap it for about a day. Starting on the edge, working our way around. Once we get all the edges adhered, we're going to just clean it up, wrap it up with a trash bag, and let it dry for about a day, and then we'll check on it tomorrow. Good job. Let it set for a day. It's ready to go. It started to stiffen up quite a bit, and you can give it a tap and tell. I'm going to go ahead and peel off the tar paper, but I'm only going to peel the tar paper off from around the walls. I'm going to leave the top piece on for now. The cool thing about the tar paper is once you use it once, you can use it multiple other times. I'm going to take my clay knife and a little bit of water, and I'm just going to clean up those seams. Now that I have access to them, I'm going to clean them up so that they're nice and smooth. Remember, we don't want to leave any jagged bits on our pots. They're just going to, be a little razor blades to cut ourselves on. I'm going to take the time to really clean up the edges so that I've got a nice, clean form. I'm also going to do the same to the bottom. I'm going to clean up the bottom, make sure that all the seams are tight, and also make sure that there's no bits, nothing that could scratch a tabletop or even, we just want to make it look good, honestly. Now that we've got everything set aside, we're going to start cutting our lid free. We're going to use our fettling knife, and we're not going to go too deep, but we're going to cut little arcs on each side. The arcs act as a registration system so that our lid will always fit back in place. Now that last cut, be sure you line up your two cut edges, or otherwise you're going to have a really weird looking lid. Right? And there we go. So now that lid will always fit back correctly on that pot, provided we don't warp it or contort it or anything like that. So the little arcs act as a registration. We're going to clean up the edges of the pot, and we're going to clean up the edges of the lid. And now that it's open, we have access to that final seam. We're going to clean up those interior seams. I'm even going to round the edges down just a little bit on the point so that they're not as likely to break. We can get in there with our clay knife, clean it up. Excellent. Now we need to still work on the pot, but if we put it right back on top of the jar, it'll stick right down. So there's another little trick we can use whenever we need to do something like this. We just use a little bit of cellophane. Set it on there. Now we can work on the pot, make sure we don't warp it, and finish up what we've got to do. So next we're going to do the top of the pot, the lid. We're going to clean up, and we're going to bevel the edges so that they have a nice sort of round form. And then we're just going to clean them up with a little bit of water. Just like I did with the points on the lid, I'm going to dab down the corners of this part of the pot, just so that it's not so easily broke, right? Makes it a little easier, and it gives the form sort of a softer look, right? There we go. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of something extra. The form is done. Now I'm going to make a few adornments. Adornments are just anything that you add to the pot after you finish the form. In this case, I'm going to make 4 little feet and a handle for the lid. So I rolled out a coil, and I'm going to take these little knobs of clay, and I'm going to square them up loosely. I'm going to compress them and square them together. And they're going to go on the bottom of the pot as feet. That last little bit I cut out is going to be the handle on the top, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now once we have the feet squared up, we're going to take our pot, flip it over carefully because it still has the lid, and we're going to score our 4 corners and score our feet. Once we have our 4 corners scored and our feet scored, we're going to apply a little bit of water, and we're just going to compress the little feet into each corner, giving them a little bit of twist until they adhere. There we go. Now once we've got our feet attached, I'm going to come back with my clay knife and just clean that edge up so that I've got a really nice crisp line there. And then I'll end up signing it. So it's just going to help visually make the pot look better. And I'm going to sign that foot. And then I'm going to carefully flip it back over. Give it a little bit of a pat so that the feet even out. And now I'm going to work on my grip for the lid. You want to be careful to make sure that there's no air pockets in it. I got to give it a little swirl. I'm going to score the middle of the lid and score the grip. I can lift it off and give it a little bit of a push, and there we go.